conducted a deeply revealing interview with former FBI Director Jim Comey. During that interview, Comey tried to claim that the Steele dossier, the one he hid information about from the president, was not central to the request for a FISA warrant against people affiliated with the Trump campaign. Here's part of it.
You called the dossier unverified, salacious. Why did you use that to the FISA court to ask for surveillance for Carter Page? Not only use it, but you led with it. A bulk of that FISA application deals with that dossier. Why?
Yeah, that's not my recollection, Brett. And I don't know that the FISA application has been released. My recollection was it was part of a broader mosaic of facts that were laid before the FISA judge to obtain a FISA warrant.
There was a lot more than the dossier in the FISA application?
My recollection was there was a significant amount of additional material about Page and why there was probable cause to believe he was an agent of a foreign power. And the dossier was part of that, but was not all of it or a critical part of it, to my recollection.
I don't know that it's been released. Hiding behind government secrecy once again. Congressman Trey Gowdy represents South Carolina. He chairs the Oversight Committee in the House of Representatives, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Chairman, thanks for coming on. What did you watched the interview. What did you learn from it?
A couple of things. Number one, the Page and Strzok he would have fired immediately, which means the two agents that were leading both the Clinton and Trump investigations should have been canned. Director Comey's recollection is flawed. If he does not remember telling Congress that his agents told him they didn't think Flynn was lying, then he needs to get his lawyers to go back and look at the transcript. We did not mishear. Maybe he misspoke, but that's in the transcript. And the double standard that he's had for the last couple of weeks still exists. You know, Clinton can lie and she ought to be president. McCabe can lie and he's still a stand-up guy. But Trump, boy, if he tells any lies at all, then impeachment is too good of a remedy for him.
And that dangerous Martha Stewart who went to prison for lying, and he brags about that in his book, right? He doesn't remember a lot. He doesn't remember when he first heard about the Steele dossier. He doesn't remember who told him about the Steele dossier. Is that plausible?
No, because he knew that Republicans paid for it, even though that's inaccurate. So if he learned about it in the fall of 2016, then it was already known that the Democrats had picked up on that work. So whoever briefed him, why would you just say the Republicans started it, but not also include the Democrats finished it? So the part about it not being part of the FISA application, not a significant part, then Tucker, why did you use it at all? And I've actually read the application, and he's just wrong. It was an indispensable part of the application, period.
So how can he claim otherwise? I mean, his first reaction was, I don't think that's been made public. In other words, you can't prove me wrong because you and the rest of the civilians asking these questions, the American citizens here, don't have access to the relevant information. But as you just pointed out, you do. You've seen it. That's not true. This forms a central part of the request, correct?
Well, there are three parts of it. This is one of the parts. They led with it. And if my recollection is correct, it occupied a disproportionately large part of that application. So I go back and ask all those who say it wasn't important, then why did you use it? If you didn't need it, why did you use it and why did you lead with it?
So let's strip away the politics and take Trump out of this so we can see clearly. At the core is the allegation that Carter Page, the hapless Carter Page, was acting, as the former director said tonight, as an agent of a foreign power. Is that a plausible claim? Do you think any reasonable person looking at the available evidence could reach a conclusion that Carter Page is a Russian agent?
It'd be tough. I think most people that have any experience with Carter Page, which would include the FBI, because they've interviewed him on a number of occasions, you'd be more likely to call him a clown than a spy.
So what do you make of that?
And I don't say that to be disparaging towards him. I mean, I spent a lot of time with him in a congressional committee room.
Right.
If anyone needed his Fifth Amendment right to counsel, if anyone needed a lawyer while he was talking to Congress, it would have been Carter Page. I just don't. I mean, he's not James Bond. He's not Jason Bourne. It's sad, actually.
So if our top law enforcement official can say with a straight face on live television that Carter Page is a foreign spy and represents a threat to American national security, he's lying, it sounds like.
Well, I don't quarrel with the FBI wanting to run out a lead. I mean, I'm probably biased, well, I am biased towards law enforcement. Go ahead and run out the lead. The challenge then becomes when you are going to spy on an American citizen, it needs to be more than a lead. You need to have probable cause and make all proper representations to the court. The other thing I will tell you, Tucker, that I learned tonight is Jim Comey has a definition of the word leak that no one else has. Yeah. What he says is a leak is what the rest of us call a felony. Leaking is disclosing a confidential conversation, which is exactly what he did.
He came off as much oilier in this interview than I've ever seen him. I thought it was deeply revealing, and I'm glad you shared my reaction to it. Mr. Chairman, thank you for coming on.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
During that interview, we're talking about Comey also had this to say about fired FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. Watch.
Yeah, I still believe he stood tall. He represented himself and the organization under tremendous stress during that period after I was fired. But I read the IG report as you did. It concluded that Andy had not been candid. This is what accountability looks like in the Justice Department.
Should he be prosecuted?
That's not for me to say.
Well, wait, you said it in the Clinton case.
Well, I was then the director of the FBI.
Which was not your role at that moment.
Private citizens should not be calling for the prosecution of people in a case they're not involved in. But I do believe, as it routinely happens, the IG will likely refer it or has referred it to a U.S. Attorney's Office to look at it.
Julian Epstein is former chief counsel of the House Judiciary Committee, and he joins us tonight. Julian, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I know you don't like Trump and you're for the Mueller investigation. Fine. But this is really about Comey, and so I think it concerns all Americans, regardless of their political point of view. I don't think you could watch this interview and not come away with grave concerns about his commitment to basic civil liberties for all Americans.
Look, I think Brett did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
I mean, it was Tim Russert quality interview. It was really, really a very good interview. But I mean, the two criticisms that have come, I watched a little bit of the coverage on the network, was that he wasn't fully revealing about the Steele dossier with the FISA application. And he wasn't clear when that started. And I think the facts are relatively clear that it was an investigation with Fusion GPS that started under Republicans. Democrats took it over.
Yeah.
In the FISA application for Carter Page, who had been incidentally under investigation since 2013-14 by the intelligence agencies.
But that doesn't mean he did anything wrong.
Well, he had said that he was regularly in touch with Russian intelligence.
No, Martin Luther King was under investigation. I'm not comparing them. I'm just saying, look, being under investigation is not a signifier that you're guilty of anything.
Right, but I think the intelligence agencies, who have more information than you and I do, believed. Well, I think it's part of an ongoing investigation. I don't expect that to be public. I don't think you expect that to be public.
I actually do at this point. I expect to know if you destroy a man's reputation, his livelihood, his capacity to support his family going forward, as we've done with Carter Page, you better tell me how he's a threat to American national security, and they haven't.
Well, I think the intelligence agencies believed that he was a dupe of Russian intelligence for many years, going back to 13 and 14. The point of the matter with Comey today was
Do you think he was?
I don't have the information.
Oh, so does it bother you that an American citizen has been destroyed by our intel and law enforcement agencies on the basis of no available evidence of wrongdoing? Why wouldn't, as a civil libertarian, you think, whoa, if that could happen to him, it could happen to me?
Well, I'm not sure his reputation has been destroyed.
Carter Page?
He's done a fair amount to destroy his reputation himself, as Trey Gowdy just said.
Oh, come on.
And I think a lot of what
has
come out about Carter Page has been because of the Republican investigations.
Okay, but whatever. I'm
oversight of the FBI.
Look,
so are you saying
before
to me,
you
Tucker,
spy on an American citizen, you better have really good. Look, these are questions that liberals used to worry about.
And
what if
and
the power?
So.
Amen. And they've stopped because they hate Trump, and so everything is okay. In light of that, you should care about Carter Page regardless of his IQ, regardless of his political affiliation.
We agree on that.
Yes.
We agree on that.
So this guy has been destroyed. No one will stand up for him. And for what? There's no evidence he did anything wrong.
You're telling me if the intelligence agencies believe that the Russians are using him as a dupe, that they have co-opted him, and they have had that information since 2014, based in part on the public statements he's made himself. You're saying the intelligence agency should give somebody a pass?
That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that once you have investigated him, and once you've let the rest of us know that you are investigating him, and once you've implied he's working for Russia, as that creep Comey just did on live television, you better prove that he did something wrong.
I think that Page it said as much himself.
That he was working for the Russian government against U.S. interests.
Page in 2013 and 14, at least according to reports, indicated that he was in contact with Russian intelligence.
Well, you know what? I've been in contact with all kinds of foreign government.
Are you in intelligence with? Are you in contact with Russian intelligence?
No, but I live in D.C. I deal with
Why would an American citizen
all the time?
Why would an American citizen be in touch with Russian intelligence?
You must be
if they
kidding.
weren't trying to use them.
You must be kidding.
No.
The number of foreign intel operatives in this city dealing with American citizens, including you and me and everyone else who lives here from lots of different countries, is overwhelming. And so the idea that you talk to someone from a foreign country, you're guilty.
No, not a foreign country. So you're going to tell me, Tucker, this is a very interesting conversation. You tell me that if a Russian intelligence agent comes to you and starts having regular conversations with you,
everyone
you're not going to report. You're not going to report that to the FBI.
What I'm saying
what if you know it's a Russian intelligence agent?
I don't know. It would be case by case.
You wouldn't report that to the FBI?
I'm a loyal American. I've done nothing to betray my country. My point is, before you suggest that someone has done something to betray his country, you better prove it. What we're doing right now is McCarthyism. We're destroying people for political ends, and the left is standing by and letting it happen because they hate Trump. And I'm telling you that we are losing something really important, which is the presumption of innocence.
So I agree with you on the presumption of innocence. I agree with you on the principle. What we're talking about here is intelligence agencies getting a warrant from an Article III judge, a FISA court judge, who the judge on 4 different occasions believed that there was probable cause to believe that he was involved with a foreign agency.
This is all crap,
this
and
is
you know it, because over 90%, I'll tell you why, because over 90% of requests are granted. None of them are turned down.
It doesn't mean they're wrong.
So let's see the application. Let's judge for ourselves. And people like Comey and the destroyers of civil liberties like him and all of the people who are abetting it are saying, oh, it's secret, you can't learn. Why can't I learn?
I'm all for the disclosure of it. I'm all for the disclosure of that FISA application.
Dude, how would you feel if this was being used against Democrats right now? You would be as upset as you should be right now.
Look, there's lots of investigations in the world that have occurred against Republicans and Democrats. Sometimes they've been legitimate, sometimes they've been illegitimate. Nobody has said the investigation into Carter Page is illegitimate. The question that Brett was asking Comey tonight was, well, when did you know that the Democrats were sponsoring the Christopher Steele investigation?
And then Comey looked right in the camera and said, oh, he's an agent of, we thought he was an agent of a foreign government. How dare you say that about somebody?
That's a counterintelligence investigation. But that's the basis for
it's been going on for years. So if they have evidence that he is, indict him. And if they don't, then look right in the camera and say, Carter Page, who graduated from the Naval Academy in Annapolis, did nothing wrong.
I'm not saying that he is. I'm not saying that Carter Page is.
It's so
I'm saying that the intelligence agencies believe that. But I think we're losing a lot of viewers in this conversation.
I know. We probably are.
We're so far in the weeds right now.
Civil liberties matter. And the left used to defend them, and they don't, and it's getting scary. That's my point.
So if the intelligence agencies have evidence that a U.S. citizen is cooperating with Russian intelligence, and they get a FISA warrant, you don't think that's a legitimate investigation?
Or move on.
Well, a FISA warrant is some level of proof to get it.
Julian, thank you.
Good to see you.
We live in a fallen world, so the online musings of rap stars carry political weight. Mark Stein joins us to discuss Kanye West's Twitter rampage. Don't miss that. Rapper Kanye West has been back on Twitter for less than 2 weeks, and he's already brought the social media company to its knees. In an epic 4-day rampage through cyberspace, West has endorsed pundit Candace Owens, the pro-Trump pundit Candace Owens, shared videos by Scott Adams, posted a photograph of himself in a Make America Great Again hat, and earned 2 retweets from the President of the United States. Well, progressives are almost unconscious with rage. Rolling Stone magazine calls West's tweet, quote, a real threat. They don't say what it's a real threat to, but they clearly mean it. Author and columnist Mark Stein knows what it's a threat to, and he joins us tonight. Mark, what are Kanye West tweets a threat to, would you say?
Well, they're a threat to the lockstep homogeneity of popular culture in the United States. And to a certain extent, I'm not unsympathetic to that. You know, some people are mocking us conservatives because we're such Squaresville daddios that when some groovy hepcat that all the beatniks dig, like Kanye West, comes along, we all get so excited that, you know, we're thrilled that he's looking at us. We're the square from frumpy wallflower at the prom, and he's given us the eye. And to be honest, I quite like the fact that the right has been celebrated. I mean, I remember in the 2000 election going to the Republican convention and being given the folder showing which celebrities were supporting George W. Bush. And when I say folder, it was an attractive piece of letter-sized paper with two names on one side. There was Pat Boone and one of the Oak Ridge boys. I can't remember which Oak Ridge boy. I think there's 9 of them. 7 of them are Democrats, one's a Green, but whichever Oak Ridge boy it was supporting George W. Bush. And I think and there was something terribly refreshing in having no purchase on pop culture. But the fact is, we're not really excited. It's not so much the excitement from our end, it's the fact that Kanye at his end is sick of being told what to think. The boxes that the left has built for its celebrity supporters are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And a self-respecting man like this guy doesn't want to be put in that box, and he just wants to bust out of that box.
Wait, are you saying that art is not the same thing as conformity?
I am, and oddly enough, it's strange to me because art is they've always got on about how transgressive they are. We need transgressive artists to bust the bounds of this and bust the bounds of that, and then they demand that all the transgressive artists march in lockstep with the approved ideology. Now I will say this, Tucker, that I think this is in a way a sort of obvious correction. Trump is a showbiz figure. He did beauty pageants and he did a reality show. He's on the Regis Philbin Christmas album, firing Blitzen and hiring Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Now, I would have voted for President Philbin if I could, but the guy who's on the Regis Philbin Christmas album is a pretty good second place. And if you think about it from Kanye's point of view, if he walks into a room and there's Chuck Schumer and there's Elizabeth Warren and over in the other corner is Donald Trump, who is Kanye going to go and talk to?
No, it's
He's
true.
going to go and talk to Trump. This, in a sense, is a natural correction to the insanity that the celebrity left has maintained since November 2016.
Well, but that's one of the reasons they've always hated Trump, because he's so off-grid, for good and bad, that he represented the possibility of a real alignment. And they hate that. That's a threat to their business. And so that's why they shut down all dissent, or any affinity for him needs to be punished immediately, because otherwise this could happen.
Yeah, and I think they understand. I mean, the Rolling Stone piece is interesting to me because the guy sounds as if he's really scared. The pop culture acts as the great enforcer in America, and everyone knows that culture is upstream of politics. If you control pop culture, the politics will follow. It's not the Supreme Court. You know, when Anthony Kennedy licenses gay marriage, he's just saying that the pop culture has told him to get on side, in effect. It's bigger than anything. So when, for example, Shania Twain, a couple of days ago, she gives an interview to The Guardian saying that if she'd been American, she'd have voted for Donald Trump. Immediately, Shania is clubbed into a pulp and is made to apologize and back down. And, and that's pathetic for Shania. Man, I feel like a woman. Man, I feel like a celebrity who has the guts to stand up to this. And I'm embarrassed for my country that Shania Twain from Timmins, Ontario, God bless her, didn't have the guts to do what Kanye did and say, get lost, I think for myself.
But I still like her. Mark Stein, a man who thinks for himself. I always learn something from this segment. I'm grateful to you for that. Thank you.
Even if it's only Shania's hometown. Now you know.
Which is good to know. See ya.
Thanks, Tucker.
Well, the disaster over at NBC with Joy Reid is getting worse and worse, and now the FBI is involved. We'll investigate the latest developments in that coming up next.
Metastatic
does it. Last week, you'll remember, internet sleuths discovered a series of highly embarrassing blog posts that Reid wrote more than 10 years ago. These days, you know, Joy Reid is a doctrinaire progressive, the most doctrinaire, but she wasn't always. She used to be, for example, aggressively anti-gay. Faced with evidence of this, Reid could have just apologized for her old views and moved on, and most people would have accepted that. But instead, she and NBC, her employer, decided to lie and pretend her blog had somehow been hacked by secret provocateurs of some kind. It's a ludicrous story, laughable. But now they've doubled down on it. They've called in the FBI to investigate this imaginary hacking. Ooh, not a good idea. NBC is playing with fire here because Reid's story is a hoax. And now NBC and Joy Reid are using the FBI to perpetuate that hoax. How's that going to end? Obviously, we'll keep you posted. In the meantime, though, some are calling for Joy Reid to be fired for all this. We are not among those. Why? Because we're not Joy Reid. If Joy Reid could push a button and yank this show off the air forever, is there any doubt that she would do that? Of course not. She'd do that in a second, and she would feel virtuous as everyone who works on this show lost their jobs. But that's not how we feel about this. We're not progressives. So silencing people we disagree with is not our goal. It never has been our goal. We don't share Joy Reid's views on pretty much anything, but we don't want her personally destroyed, and we don't want her show boycotted and canceled. In some ways, actually, we're rooting for Joy Reid, amazingly, since we know what it's like to be on the wrong side of a howling Twitter mob. It's a lonely place, and increasingly it's a commonplace in modern America, unfortunately. Still, though, we wish Joy Reid and NBC would stop lying. And not just lying, but lying in the most insultingly obvious way. Your 8-year-old could tell more convincing lies than NBC News does, and probably would feel more guilty about it afterwards than they do. Buck Sexton has watched all this from the beginning. He's a radio host who used to work at the CIA, and he joins us tonight. So, Buck, if you were making up a fake story like this and pretending that unseen saboteurs had put words in your mouth on your blog 12 years ago, and people all of a sudden said, Buck Sexton, you're lying, would you double down and get the FBI involved?
No, it's going to create, I think, even more problems for her, much greater problems for her, possibly, than what we saw initially. As you pointed out, a lot of folks would have accepted an apology from her, and instead, she may have created legal trouble, which clearly nobody was suggesting was the case from the get-go. It is, in fact, a crime to lie to federal agents, and even filing a false report is a crime. Now, whether or not the FBI would choose to go forward with that charge, how quickly they move on this, Tucker, is also another thing. You've got thousands of hacks actually happening every day across the country. Just because Joy Reid sounds like she's really upset over this hoax hack doesn't mean it goes to the top of the list.
So, I mean, it just seems like you could wind up stuck in this. It's almost like when a lie gets out of control, and you could wind up punished for it. So what is the FBI going to, I mean, look, we know that her blog was not hacked. No one hacked it 12 years ago and waited like a sleeper cell to surprise us with it now. Her Twitter feed was not hacked all those years ago. So the FBI comes in, they take a look at this, they decide it's a hoax. What do they do then? Do they punish her?
I think it's very unlikely. You know, a lot of false statement cases, you're going to see somebody who is you've got thousands of hacks actually happening every day across the country. Just because Joy Reid sounds like she's really upset over this hoax hack doesn't mean it goes to the top of the list.
So, I mean, it just seems like you could wind up stuck in this. It's almost like when a lie gets out of control, and you could wind up punished for it. So what is the FBI going to, I mean, look, we know that her blog was not hacked. No one hacked it 12 years ago and waited like a sleeper cell to surprise us with it now. Her Twitter feed was not hacked all those years ago. So the FBI comes in, they take a look at this, they decide it's a hoax. What do they do then? Do they punish her?
I think it's very unlikely. You know, a lot of false statement cases, you're going to see somebody who is the target of the false allegation, and that's why they might actually want to punish the person who levels it. In this case, Joy Reid is accusing these unknown, mysterious cyber entities. She might as well just say it's the Russians while she's at it. Why not? But, you know, she's just making it up as she goes along. The FBI has more important things, legitimately has much more important things to do than this. But I will say this, Tucker, think about it from her perspective. Now that she has this cover of the FBI's investigating, maybe a few days passes, maybe a few weeks passes. The FBI could track this down in a matter of hours if they wanted to, but I don't think they really care all that much. They might have one agent at a field office here in New York City or in D.C., wherever she's located, take a look at it and say, okay, nothing here, and therefore she can run out the clock with this in a sense. Because if they don't press charges and she lives to fight another day on MSNBC as a result of the delay, it's actually a tactic.
So, I mean, when the Chinese military takes down the New York Stock Exchange, I'm going to ask the FBI, were you too busy investigating Joy Reid's fake Twitter conspiracy to be on actual threats to the country? I mean, it's a fair question. Buck Sexton, thank you for that. I hope you'll come back as we continue to follow this breaking story.
Good to see you, Tucker. Thank you.
Great to see you. A correction tonight to a story we brought you yesterday about alleged sexual harassment at the Center for American Progress, which is the biggest left-wing nonprofit here in Washington. We said that 19 people had accused multiple individuals at CAP of sexual harassment. Currently, though, only one CAP employee, his name is Benton Strong, has been accused. BuzzFeed did interview 19 people for their story, but not all of them claimed abuse. We don't know how many did, actually. The piece says there were several incidents of sexual harassment at CAP. No exact number given. So we want to be clear about that. We're going to learn a lot more about this story. And of course, we'll bring you those updates as we get them. Well, an internal document at Google reveals that the company tried to suppress concepts like individual achievement and objectivity on the grounds that they were facets of white culture, whatever that is. That story is amazing, and it's next. Well, this just broke during our show. The leaders of North and South Korea have made history tonight. Kim Jong-un has crossed the Korean demilitarized zone to meet his counterpart, the South Korean president. The South Korean president did the same, briefly crossing into the north. That hasn't happened since 1953, at least. The meeting is part of summit negotiations seeking to reduce hostilities on the peninsula there. I'm not exactly sure where this is going, but obviously we'll follow it all night. In recent years, the digital video monopoly YouTube, which is part of the digital search monopoly Google, has been accused of trying to silence conservative viewpoints. PragerU and other innocuous center-right content providers have found themselves censored on YouTube. YouTube denies doing any of this on purpose. It was accidental, they say. We have no political agenda. Well, it turns out that's a lie. This show has exclusively obtained an internal YouTube memo from April of 2017, last year, that lays out in detail how YouTube censors videos. One of the reasons the extent of YouTube censorship isn't obvious to most people is because the company is smart enough not to scrub every video it wants to censor. Instead, many videos wind up in what the memo describes as limited state. Sounds like something out of Scientology. Videos in limited state are intentionally pushed down on the site, so they're harder to find. They're also demonetized, meaning the people who post them can't make money from them, no matter how often they're viewed. Think that isn't a big deal? What would happen if you couldn't find the New York Times on a newsstand? What would happen if its publishers weren't allowed to make money from selling it? Would that qualify as censorship? Obviously, of course it would. So what are the criteria for censoring videos on YouTube? Well, according to the memo, quote, controversial religious or supremacist content qualifies. So does, quote, highly controversial inflammatory content. What exactly does any of that mean? None of it is defined. It's totally subjective. YouTube makes the call and does so with maximum political intent. For example, YouTube decided it was inflammatory for PragerU to question the notion that all cops are racist. If you don't think they are, you're in trouble, according to YouTube. So PragerU's video was demonetized and effectively declared hate speech. Yet videos that suggest that, I don't know, white people are inherently evil remain on YouTube without any restrictions. That's clearly political. The memo makes it very clear where YouTube censors are coming from. It explains that the company is committed to, quote, the freedom to belong, including the resulting benefits of diversity and inclusion. Okay, sounds good. But what exactly does that mean? Again, it's entirely subjective and intentionally so. At one point, the memo declares that any, quote, demeaning language against a protected group may result in a video being removed from the site. So who are these protected groups? Well, according to YouTube, refugees are a protected group. So let's say you don't like the fact that refugees are being resettled in your neighborhood, for example. You've assumed it was your right as a citizen to disagree with government policy. Nope, not according to YouTube. They will censor your complaints about what your government is doing and call you a bigot in the process if you don't like refugee resettlement policy, for example. Well, it's not surprising that one of the trusted flaggers YouTube has deputized to censor extremist content is the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is itself, irony of ironies, an extremist group. The SPLC has a long history of inciting hatred and division for political ends. It was the SPLC that slandered the Family Research Council as, quote, a hate group, and labeled the Pulse nightclub shooting a right-wing attack, which, as you know, it was not. The SPLC is totally discredited, and anyone who spends 5 minutes reading about it comes to that conclusion. And yet YouTube trusts the Southern Poverty Law Center to censor your videos, and that tells you a lot. We contacted YouTube for a statement on all of this, and we asked whether the company had revised its policies since the memo was written last year. The company barely responded. A Flack linked us to a blog post written by a Google lawyer last June in which he vowed that the company would be more aggressive in censoring videos it doesn't like. It's worth noting that almost nobody in power is fighting back against this censorship. Here you have an American company incubated in America by Americans under the protection of American law and courts, which is now working to undermine the most sacred of American rights, which is the freedom of expression. Yet the Congress, which is run, by the way, by Republicans right now, is doing precisely nothing about this. When you ask them, they mumble something unintelligible about free markets and get back to designing another tax cut for companies like YouTube. Meanwhile, the rest of us who live here, the ones who still care about free speech, are left to fend for ourselves. The big digital monopolies demand that we conform to their worldview, and they shut us down when we dissent. They have too much power. They are a threat to this country. It is time to complain while we still can. But YouTube isn't the only politicized part of Google. In an internal memo written by Google, revealed by James Damore's lawsuit, managers are told to avoid rewarding people for following the dominant, quote, white male culture of America. Aspects of that culture, the memo said, included the meritocracy, belief in objectivity, and individual achievement. Ideas that nobody thought were race-specific until now. Harmeet Dillon is representing James Damore in this lawsuit. She joins us tonight. It's hard to believe this is even real. Tell us what the memo says.
Yeah, so the memo basically says it's part of a Google program for managers called Inclusive Perf, which is inclusive performance, and they are coached and sometimes forced to evaluate people on managers on the feedback they give to their employees. So this memo is about when you give feedback to your employees, be careful not to give too positive feedback to white people for stuff that is white, according to Google, such as merit-based performance and individual excellence and so forth. And then, you know, when you're giving feedback to people of color, you should be sensitive to the fact that they're more likely to be in favor of group achievement and collective values. There's some negative traits associated with whites, which is supposed to be that they talk about you instead of to you, you know, so they're backstabbing. There are these gross racial stereotypes on both sides that are deeply offensive. For example, to say that this stereotype that whites care about meritocracy and accomplishment is to imply that other races don't. I mean, so this is clearly absurd. And the most absurd thing is that James Damore purportedly, after the fact, was let go because of gender stereotypes. But Google perpetuates racial stereotypes every single day in its management. It's shocking.
But they don't, of course, hold their, I don't know, programming staff to these same standards. I mean, of course, they demand excellence when it comes to writing the code that is the basis of their business.
Right, of course they should.
Right, yeah, of course, as they should, by the way. I agree with that. So what's their response been? I mean, this seems horrifying, incredibly divisive, inherently bigoted, as you just pointed out. Are they conceding this is real?
No, I don't think they get it. I mean, Google is too big to fail, too powerful to be questioned, and so they've been getting away with this. And in fact, in the face of our lawsuit, they simply describe all criticism of their race baiting and racial gerrymandering as alt-right criticism. So all of us
why are look? You've been you know, you and I had the same job 25 years ago. You've been a conservative your whole life. You're on the Dartmouth Review 30 years ago. Why are conservatives, Republicans in Washington defending this crap, defending Google? Why aren't they doing something about this?
Well, I'm afraid one very crass reason is that Google spreads the money around both sides. So members of Congress and the Senate who have power to do something about antitrust issues, these gross employment violations, they don't care. It's hard to get their attention. And, you know, Google very carefully spreads the money around in the media as well, and in nonprofits as well. I mean, they're really ubiquitous and everywhere. And so as a result, people know which side their bread is buttered. And there are very few principled people who say, you know what, I don't want to take your money, Google. I'm going to criticize you, and I'm going to be objective about it. So that's what we're running up against here in this case. Now, there are a lot of patriots who are shocked by this. I mean, we've had the recent example just this week of Google trying to seal our lawsuit. In fact, they have sealed it for a 2-month period, believe it or not. They called up the court and they said, you know, some of our employees are being harassed. We want to bring a motion to seal this entire lawsuit. And the court has sealed it for 2 months. So for 2 months now, the public is not going to be able to go to the Santa Clara County Superior Court and read that. But where's the outrage? Nobody seems to care.
Well, it's on this show. Thank you for all you're doing. Harmeet,
My pleasure.
thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Time for Final Exam. Can you beat our 2 experts at recalling what happened this week? That's just ahead. Also ahead, this show has been implicated in a crouton scandal. We're going to clear up the details on that. We are strongly pro-crouton. We'll tell you why. Just ahead. Now it's time for Final Exam, when the yapping stops and the testing begins, where the wheat is winnowed from the chaff with the help of data. Our 2 contestants, we find out who has been paying closer attention to the news this week. Defending champion Daily Walkthrough editor-in-chief Katie Freitas, her challenger townhall.com political editor Guy Benson. We'll be teaming up with Marie Harf to launch Benson and Harf on Fox News Radio. That debuts Monday, May 7th, fairly soon. Okay. Katie is, as we said, the returning champion. And
I'm nervous.
Yeah. Guy, you've been through this before. You've got nerves of steel. So I just want to wish you both luck. You know the rules, but for our viewers who may not remember, hands on buzzers. I ask the questions. First one to buzz in gets to answer the question. You wait until I finish asking in order to answer. You are penalized if you don't. Each correct answer is worth 1 point. Each incorrect detracts a point from your total. Best of 5 wins. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Question 1. Kanye West was not the only celebrity criticized this week for supporting the President of the United States. Which country music star had the temerity to say she would have voted for Donald Trump? Guy Benson.
Shania Twain.
Shania Twain from Canada. We will see. Roll tape, please.
That don't impress me much.
Shania Twain getting slammed by her fans for saying she would have voted for President Trump. The singer, who's from Canada, telling The Guardian he seemed honest. She's now apologizing on Twitter, saying she regrets answering the question. So stupid.
It's so
You a
stupid.
Shania Twain fan?
I like some of her music, yeah. And she was honest and then was pilloried for being honest, which is sort of what happens these days.
2018 in a single sentence. Would have voted for Donald Trump. Guy Benson.
Shania Twain.
Shania Twain from Canada. We will see. Roll tape, please.
That don't impress me much.
Shania Twain getting slammed by her fans for saying she would have voted for President Trump. The singer, who's from Canada, telling The Guardian he seemed honest. She's now apologizing on Twitter, saying she regrets answering the question. So stupid.
It's so
You a
stupid.
Shania Twain fan?
I like some of her music, yeah. And she was honest and then was pilloried for being honest, which is sort of what happens these days.
2018 in a single sentence. That's exactly right. Question 2. There was a state visit this week by the President of France, but it was a piece of the First Lady's wardrobe that created a huge distraction in the media and online. Which item of clothing were people talking about? Katie.
Her hat.
Her hat. People don't wear hats. Are
Her
you
big
sure?
white hat.
Her big white hat. Okay. Let's see if the tape verifies your claim.
Obviously, lots of people talking about Melania Trump's hat. That's the buzz of the picture.
I must ask you, according to Eric, I'm outing him, the hat. He wants more on the hat.
Okay.
The hat. Did you like the hat? What? Kate Anderson Brower. I got you, Eric. Kate Anderson Brower. We want to know more about the hat.
When you commit to a hat like that, you got to wear it for the rest of the day. She committed to that hat.
Okay, so our judges are pointing out that within this context, the correct answer is chapeau, but we will go with hat under these circumstances. Katie?
I'm sorry that I'm ignorant.
You're American, and that's nothing to apologize for. You never apologize for being American. Question 3. Which lawmaker just proudly presented a new jobs plan that would give a guaranteed $15 an hour government job to every single American who wants one? Guy Benson.
Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders, independent socialist of Vermont. Is Bernie Sanders the correct answer?
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders reportedly ready to roll out a new guarantee for every American. You get a government job.
$15 an hour with benefits. Not only is this economic nonsense, it's also, in my opinion, grossly immoral.
So here's a quick bonus follow-up. If all 320 million Americans worked at the DMV, would it be a better agency?
No.
No. Okay, good. You win. I can't give you a point, but you're right. Question 4. This is multiple choice. A woman was just fined $500 by bureaucratic customs officials for bringing what off an airplane? Was it a filthy airplane blanket? Was it an apple? Or was it a Cuban cigar? Katie.
Apple.
Apple. Apple. Really? Apple? Yep. Okay. To the tape.
U.S. Customs and Border Patrol takes a bite out of one traveler's wallet, fining her $500 for bringing an apple through customs.
The violation is for one apple. Once again, the apple is from Delta, and I think that's the most important part to take away from the story.
Yeah, that's the most important part. Okay, so now we find, this is where we find ourselves when we have high-level players, when it's really a varsity match, when it's an Ali Frazier lineup. It's 2-2. Sudden death. Question 5 will determine the winner.
God.
Are you both ready?
Whew, yep.
Okay. Katie, you seem very calm.
I just really like this, so I don't want to
I know you do, and we like you. So Godspeed. And we like you too, Guy. Multiple choice. President Trump says he is celebrating his wife's birthday today. He got her something to mark the occasion. Was it A, a beautiful card, B, a tremendous wristwatch, or C, some killer heels? Guy Benson.
The greatest card.
The greatest to the greatest card?
Yes.
That seems paltry.
It does, but...
That's what you're sticking with.
I am.
Greatest card. Roll tape, please.
Very, very special day because it's Melania's birthday.
Do you want to tell us what you got her?
Maybe I didn't get her so much. I'll tell you what she has done. I got her a beautiful card. You know, I'm very busy to be running out looking for presents, okay? But I got a beautiful card.
Our judges are saying, though he said absolutely beautiful and you said the greatest, that's okay. They're synonyms effectively. Though I was.
I always miss the
You did such a great job. And in fact, and we didn't even realize that you might not win. So I'm going to take my pens out of this mug and give it to Guy Benson. Here is your victory mug.
No Wemple for you.
With the confused look.
Yes, the confused, which reflects reality. Trust me. Thank you both. Katie, it was great to see you. I hope you'll come back. Guy, congrats.